Welcome back to my inner sanctum. I'm your hostess, Countess Elizabeth, mistress of the macabre. Terrible things can happen in the most ordinary places, such as one's commute to work. These people were not expecting a terrorist attack to happen while they were on the morning train to the office, but this is exactly what happened for some people who were on the morning train to work during the Tokyo subway sarin attacks. Today, my fiends, we will look into what led up to this terrorist event perpetrated by a Japanese death cult known as Shinrikyo. So, let us get shoved into that packed subway train so we can explore our grotesque curiosity. The Tokyo subway sarin attack was an act of domestic terrorism perpetuated on March 20th, 1995, in Tokyo, Japan, by members of the cult movement known as Shinrikyo. In 5 coordinated attacks, the perpetrators released sarin on 3 lines of the Tokyo metro during rush hour, killing 14 people and injuring 5,500 people in varying degrees, and causing temporary vision problems for nearly 1,000 others. The attack was directed against trains passing through Kasumi, Gaseki, and Nagatasho, where the Diet, Japanese parliament, is headquartered in Tokyo. Here is some background that led up to those events. Now known as a doomsday cult, the attacks were carried out by Shinrikyo. Shinrikyo was founded in 1984 as a yoga and meditation class, initially known as Omu Shinshen no Kai by pharmacist Chizuo Matsumoto. The group believed in a doctrine revolving around a synthetic mixture of Indian and Tibetan Buddhism, as well as Christian and Hindu beliefs, especially relating to the Hindu god of Shiva. They believed Armageddon to be inevitable in the form of a global war involving the United States and Japan, that non-members were doomed to eternal hell, but could be saved if they were killed by the cult members, and that only members of the cult would survive the apocalypse, and would afterwards build the kingdom of Samhala. Around 1987, the mental health of Matsumoto, now going by the name Shoko Asahara, deteriorated. He developed anxiety and expressed suicidal views. Asahara had experienced delusions of grandeur as early as 1985. While meditating, he claims that the god Shiva had been revealed to him and had appointed him Abirakesu no Mikoto, the god of light who leads the armies of the gods, who was to build the kingdom of Samhala, a utopian society made out of those who had developed psychic powers. In 1990, Asahara announced that the group would run 25 candidates in the election that year to the Japanese Diet under the banner of Shinrito, Truth Party. Despite showing confidence in their ability to gain seats in the Diet, the party received only 1,783 votes. The failure to achieve power legitimately, Asahara blamed the external conspiracy propaganda by quote-unquote Freemasons and Jews, caused him to order the cult to produce botulism and phosphine in order to overthrow the Japanese government. As members became disillusioned with the group and defected, an attitude among the remaining members that the enlightened ones did not deserve salvation became accepted. Attempts to stockpile botulism toxin also proved unsuccessful. With the intention of building a compound incorporating facilities such as a phosphine plant, Shinrikyo used 14 dummy companies to purchase acres of land and began construction. It would be one of these plants that they would produce the sarin toxin. Public attitudes towards the cult had become very negative due to the suspicions around the cult's illegal activities. A police investigation resulted in the arrest of several members, causing Asahara to fear a police raid. He hence ordered the destruction of all biological and chemical weapon stockpiles, and for the cult to focus on legitimate, non-violent strategies only. After the destruction of the illegal weapon stockpiles, the cult relied on mainstream methods to attract other members. This included frequent television appearances by Asahara, as well as setting up the Shinrikyo broadcasting radio station in Russia in April 1992. However, starting in late 1992, Asahara's mental health deteriorated further. His suicidal feelings became intensified. He began to complain of hallucinations and paranoia, and he withdrew from public appearances, except those on the Shinrikyo broadcasting, claiming society was preventing him from fulfilling his destiny as Christ. At some point in 1992, Asahara published a declaration claiming himself as Christ, in which he identified as the Lamb of God. He outlined a doomsday prophecy, which included a third world war and described a final conflict culminating in nuclear Armageddon, borrowing the term from the Book of Revelations. His purported mission was to take upon himself the sins of the world, and he claimed he would transfer to his followers a spiritual power and take away their sins. Asahara claimed to be able to see dark conspiracies everywhere, promulgated by Jews, Freemasons, the Dutch, and rival Japanese religions. The cult then began to manufacture a toxin known as sarin, used for a coordinated terrorist attack. On Monday, March 20th, 1995, 5 members of Shinrikyo launched a chemical attack on Tokyo subway, one of the world's busiest commuter transport systems, at the peak hour of morning rush hour. The chemical agent used, liquid sarin, was contained in plastic bags, and each team wrapped in newspaper. Each perpetrator carried 2 packets, totaling approximately 0.9 liters or 30 U.S. fluid ounces of sarin, except Yusho Hayashi, who carried 3 bags totaling 1.3 liters or 44 U.S. fluid ounces of sarin. Carrying their packets of sarin in umbrellas with sharpened tips, the perpetrators boarded their appointed trains. At prearranged stations, the sarin packets were dropped and punctured several times with the sharpened tip of the umbrella. Each perpetrator then got off the train and exited the station to meet his accomplice with a car. Leaving the punctured packets on the floor allowed the sarin to leak out onto the train and on the station. The sarin affected passengers, subway workers, and those who came into contact with them. Sarin is the most volatile of nerve agents, which means that it can quickly and easily evaporate from a liquid into a vapor and spread into the environment. People can be exposed to the vapor even if they do not come in contact with the liquid form of sarin. Because it evaporates so quickly, sarin presents an immediate but short-lived threat. One such incident on a metro line was that of the line bound for Ogikubo. 2 men, Kenichi Hirose and Koichi Kitamura, were assigned to release 2 packets on the westbound Marunouchi line destined for Ogikubo Station. The pair left Alm headquarters in Shibuya at 6 a.m. and drove to Yosuya Station. There, Hirose boarded the westbound Marunouchi line train, then changed to a northbound JR East Saiko line train in Shinjuku Station, and got off at Ikebukuro Station. He then bought a sports tabloid to wrap the sarin packets in, and boarded the second car of the Marunouchi line train A777. As he was about to release the sarin, Hirose believed that the loud noises caused by the newspaper-wrapped packets had caught the attention of a schoolgirl. To avoid further suspicion, he got off the train at either Maiguya-dani or Korakuen Station and moved to the third car instead of the second. As the train approached Ochanomizu Station, Hirose dropped the newspaper to the floor and repeated an Om mantra and punctured both sarin packets with so much force that he bent the tip of his sharpened umbrella. Both packets were successfully broken and all 900 milliliters, 30 U.S. fluid ounces of sarin were released onto the floor of the train. Hirose then departed the train at Ochanomizu and left Kitamura's car waiting outside in the station. Hirose's clumsy retreat of the sarin resulted in him accidentally poisoning himself, but he was able to administer an antidote and store it in Kitamura's car. At Nadakano Sakue Station, 14 stops later, 2 severely injured passengers were carried out of the train car, while station attendant Sumio Nishimura removed the sarin packets. One of these 2 passengers was the only fatality from this attack. The train continued with the sarin still on the floor of the third car. 5 stops later, at 8:38 a.m., the train reached Ogikubo Station, the end of the Marunouchi line, all while passengers continued to board the train. The train continued eastbound until it was finally taken out of service in Shinkoijin Station 2 stops later. The entire ordeal resulted in 1 passenger's death and 358 being seriously injured. This is just one example of what happened that day, since they planned 5 coordinated attacks on the subway system lines, with each attack going according to plan. On the day of the attack, ambulances transported 688 patients, and nearly 5,000 people reached the hospital by other means. In total, 278 hospitals saw 5,510 patients, 17 of whom were deemed critical, 37 were severe, and 984 were moderately ill with vision problems. Most of those reporting to the hospitals were worried well, who had been distinguished from those who were ill. The categorization was that a moderate casualty just had meiosis, which is the excessive constriction of the pupil. A severe casualty was someone with a shortness of breath, or had muscular twitching or gastrointestinal problems, as well as meiosis. And a severe or critical casualty required intensive care unit. Witnesses said that the subway entrances resembled battlefields. However, several of those affected by the sarin went to work in spite of their symptoms, not realizing that they had been exposed to sarin. Most of the victims sought medical treatment as the symptoms worsened as they learned of the actual circumstances of the attacks via news broadcasts. By mid-afternoon, the mildly affected victims had recovered from vision problems and were released from hospital. Most of the remaining patients were well enough to go home the following day, and within a week, only a few critical patients remained in hospital. The death toll on the day of the attack was 8, with 4 dying subsequently, ultimately with a total of 14 people who died. Several of those affected were exposed to sarin only by helping those who had been directly exposed. Among these were passengers from other trains, subway workers, and healthcare workers. Following the attack, Japanese police raided the Aum Shinrikyo facilities and arrested members. The cult's headquarters in Tokyo was raided by police on May 16, 1995. Shortly after the attack, Aum lost its status as a religious organization, and many of its assets were seized. Many of the members of the cult were sentenced to death in their roles in the attack. Asahara was sentenced to death by hanging on February 27, 2004. Asahara and 12 other Aum cultists were finally executed by hanging July 2018, after all appeals were exhausted. The sarin gas attack was the most serious attack on Japan since World War II. Well, that was truly a grotesque tale. Maybe I will do a video on how people get into such group, but there were so many people who coordinated this massive terrorist attack and who were part of the Aum Supreme Truth cult and who also believed that in order to save people, the cult needed to kill them. It just seems like a strange idea to me, but then again, Japan is a strange place. May the souls of those who died in the attack rest in peace. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe, like, and share if you would also like to keep exploring our grotesque curiosity. We will meet again in the darkness of the night.